golden afternoon, and I remember having the familiar conviction that life was beginning over again with the summer and summer.
You're going to fall back on that, but that's easily breakable.
Well, I think you play more short term. You think you're short term thinking, like, I'm going to, like us, if we just did this podcast and released 10 episodes and like we got 30 subscribers and the video that did the best was like 120 views, and we're like, this is a waste of time. We're not getting the results that we want. I think that's a clear indicator that you're trying to win the lottery. You're hanging your hat on again vanity metrics and all that stuff. The stuff is stuff's a slog, man. It's hard.
It's a slog. It's not easy. And I like the loudest people are the ones that they get the lucky lottery ticket and they go tell everybody how lucky they were that they got and then everybody, instead of thinking like that was a lottery ticket, they're like, oh, I need to go buy more scratch offs. Like, this is the way. And you go your whole life searching for that scratch off, and you might hit it, but like even if you do, like, great, okay,
right?
You still have any meaning behind it. There's nothing. So I think I kind of want to talk a little bit about what we discussed earlier in regard to why we're doing this, and
you mean this podcast?
This podcast. So I guess for viewers, we've done about 10 episodes.
We filmed 10 episodes. Yeah. And at this point, 3 have been released.
Yeah. And so, I mean, do you want to kind of give the lead in as to what's shaping our thinking right now?
Yeah.
And then we can kind of differentiate how each of us are, because I think both of us have similar perspectives but different in a way. And I tend to be more self-critical, and I tend to have more of a dialogue about this is ridiculous, and you are more able to just approach things as they are and kind of be honest with yourself, but if that's positive honesty too, then
just think about it this way. Think about the amount of time and energy we've put into this.
Absolutely.
Now, we have crafted it in a way where if you think big picture content creation, everything from the highest levels of film, cinema, 90 days, 14-hour shoots, $300 million, all that stuff, crazy amount of resources going into something, compared to like someone just doing TikToks with their iPhone and it takes them 20 minutes to do the whole process. We really set this up to be fairly simple, right? We've got flip cameras because we like the look, but it's also
efficient,
low friction, all that stuff. Your studio's great. You don't have kids running around. Audrey's out while we're recording usually, so it's not a lot of it's not very complex, right? But if you still think about it, this is maybe our 11th episode or whatever. We've sat down. Probably because, of course, we're here for like 3 or 4 hours every time we record one 1-hour episode.
All of the pilots that we didn't record.
You're talking about like a week and a half, 2 weeks of your life that we've just been sitting here doing this. Not let alone the time spent, even with assistance of AI, crafting the description, editing it, me combing it, the show notes, the clips, all that stuff. So what makes you want to do that? Like it's not a small undertaking.
Absolutely.
Especially when our lives, you've got a full-time gig, you've got a YouTube channel, you're pursuing art and creativity in other ways. I have my 2 channels, the main one being my Final Cut channel. I've got my family, 2 kids, limited time and availability. So a lot of things pulling at us, right?
Absolutely.
Yet we make time for this.
Yeah.
So for me,
and what we get excited about like so we've gone through a couple of weeks where we weren't able to record, and stuff happens. I one time Matt had to bail, and then one time I had to bail, and it's like dude, sorry, like I really like I actually don't, we get into it, and it's
you start. I call it stacking wins in a sense. It's kind of lame, but it's just some people call it. What does Stutz call it? This Netflix documentary with Jonah Hill. He calls it string of pearls, I think.
Yeah. It's like the Jerry Seinfeld X's on the calendar.
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
You build this. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And Seinfeld's a great thing. I just read something about him where he sits down every day with a legal pad and writes. And he puts in that work. He makes time for it. He does all that. So we're doing that as well. And really, really pushing hard to have that consistency. So you establish that, and then life, children's illness, travel, work, whatever comes up, and you miss a couple weeks, and it's like this, like friend, like literally a friend, but then also the actual making of this thing is a friend. And it's like, there's this absence in my life of making something.
Absolutely.
That, and this comes to the motivation again. Like, obviously I get value out of this just personally. And we talked about this earlier. Like, are you motivated for more masturbatory reasons? Like, is this just something that's just for you, that you get something out of this? And who cares if people get value? You just like sitting down, talking, being on camera, seeing what kind of views you get on YouTube, all that stuff. Versus,
I can safely say that the liking being on camera is not my motivation.
Right. Yeah. And I sit there and I go, what's the flip side of that coin for motivation? And I, again, just go, in thinking of my relationship with you over the last 4 or 5 years, however long it's been, which is crazy to me that it's been that long.
Yeah.
I sit there and I go, obviously from all of our conversations, we've worked ourselves up from what we've talked about, whether it's talking about movies or our own, pursuit of art and creativity, all of that stuff. Where you're just like, do you remember that time we went out doing photographs and we got so worked up about like doing a photo series on filming these office cubicles and office spaces?
This was just
which
obscure.
I still think is
I forget
awesome.
what we were doing. I don't know.
We were just out.
We might have just been out like getting drinks or something. Like it was something pretty low key.
But we had our cameras and we were kind of screwing around. I still, I was still dabbling and kind of playing around with like street photography or urban photography.
This was probably two or three years ago.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, we got so fired up about this series about old office buildings, like out of date.
Yep. And I think about how you meet some people and you have that result from encounters with them, from conversations with them, from whatever it is. And you go, you obviously say that feeling has value to me. I want to feel that way. I want to, have that experience and kindred spirits and all that kind of stuff. And then, you have enough of them and you go, we're working through some stuff. Like I'm having some breakthroughs. I'm kind of getting a better understanding of myself, my approach, my work, whatever it is. I feel like other people would get something out of this, especially people that don't have a you, or for you and me, or some of my other friends that I can really get into this stuff with.
Yeah.
I think that they might get value in hearing our conversations, and then of course becoming part of the community through YouTube, our podcast, and leaving comments. Who knows where this is going to go? If it's there's some other mechanism that
couple more Scorsese videos.
Yeah.
On the moon.
So then you create that community and everybody's just helping each other, figure stuff out or not figure it out.
Well,
but
I think that's a beautiful summation of what we intend this to be.
Yeah.
Because for context, I came in today and I looked at Matt and I said, is this probably just because it's been a couple of weeks since we've recorded an episode.
Right.
And we've posted 3 episodes at this point. We've kind of seen you've seen views go up, views go down, the audio version, the video version, you kind of see that. And we have tried not to pay too close attention to metrics or anything, but you start to see some of it and there's really only been positive feedback.
Yeah.
But, that voice creeps up, and it creeped up in the last week or so, where it's just like, you guys are just sitting there talking about this out of left field kind of stuff, and it has a core to it. It has we try to keep it kind of self-contained.
Yeah.
But we're talking about this stuff, and it's just personal experience, and you can find yourself asking the question. Mm-hmm. It's like it's the mushroom trip question where you're like, I don't matter. Like nobody should be paying attention to me.
Yeah.
I have nothing to add to whatever. And you just kind of put together perfectly why I think that's wrong, because that's looking at, like, yes, we're trying to add to this thing or whatever, but I think we started this personally because we like the idea of, you know, the podcast as a form of craft, as a form of expression. So that's something that we get to experiment with. But it is that there's a couple of people in my life that I'll have a conversation with and I can be completely unmotivated going into that conversation. Like, completely haven't picked up a pen or haven't sat down at the typewriter, haven't picked up a camera in weeks. Mm-hmm. And then I can have a 20-minute conversation with that person or an hour conversation, and I'm more charged than I've ever been to go out, and I need to create something now.
Yep. Super inspired.
Yeah. Yep. And more of those moments have come from conversations that we've had than with, you know, and I want, I guess the idea is, like, can we bottle that?
Yeah.
I wanted to try, and every episode might not have that, but I want to have something that's almost on-demand access for people.
Yeah.
To where they have, because, you know, I went a long time in my life where I didn't have that resource. I'm sure you probably did as well, where it's like you don't have access to somebody who just charges you up, especially we're more on the introverted side. So, you know, most of the time conversations with people just drain us.
Sure.
Like you're like, oh man, thank goodness that's over. And yet we'll leave 2-hour conversations and I'm like, yeah, I got to get out there and shoot. Like, let's go. Like, I have more energy than I've had all week.
Yeah,
and like
fired up.
And I want to, like, the idea is, can we bottle that and put it out there?
Yeah.
And maybe not, but I think that's that's the whole point of this thing is, we're just discussing personal experience. Yeah. Do we have any great knowledge to add? No, we have our perspectives, which is that's all art really is at the end of the day.
Yep.
And we're going to talk about it, you know, for an hour every other week or so, and hopefully other people leave it and they're charged up about it and they have some different ideas, or we talk about something that inspires them to think about something else. And, you know, if that happens to just a few people, I think we've succeeded in the podcast. And, you know, going back to it, why do we do this? I think we enjoy, you get to that craft aspect of it. And, you know, the benefits to us, while we do get excited about analytics and stuff, I think the benefits to us are the craft of creating something, building like this brand from scratch. That's a beautiful thing. We both really enjoy that. Yeah. And the idea of journaling our thoughts.
Yes.
And putting dates to them.
Yep.
And then putting that up for it to be out there. It's terrifying and it's exciting. And I think that us doing that, whenever I do that from an authentic place, if I ever do, like, when you go back and you watch videos of yourself in high school, you're not cringing because it's a video of yourself in high school. You're cringing because that wasn't coming from a real place.
Yeah, yeah.
And, you know, I think that's the litmus test is, are we going to watch these in a year and be like, I watched my YouTube videos from a year ago and some of them I'm like, but most of them I'm like, yeah, that's just where I was. Yeah. That's awesome. I love going back and watching some of those things, and I'm sure that you have similar.
Yeah, I think I think a lot of times when, you know, just watching back the 3 episodes, I've obviously, you know, sort of watched them in a sense by editing them or me getting the show notes or pulling clips and all that. And that fear, I think, is always going to creep in. Like, who are these guys to have a podcast? Yeah. Like,
what hour-long podcast about the creative process?
Yeah, what is, you know, this? And I sit there and I'll have those thoughts, maybe not as potent as they are potentially with you, your experience of it, but I'll have those thoughts and I'll go, you know, and I go back to that thing again, which is, I know that we're making this for the right reasons. Like, we're motivated from a good place. Yeah. And I know I am for sure. And I'll sit there and go, you know, that certainly takes that fear away. And I go, if I was looking for a podcast to help me, this is the type of podcast I would respond to.
We're our favorite podcast.
And I have watched it back, and I literally will think to myself,
Yeah.
I wonder what other podcasts are out there that have a similar.
Yeah, like
It doesn't have to be like
we want to hear it from somebody else.
Yes.
Yeah.
And maybe part of that is that's affirmation that maybe we're onto something.
Yeah.
But again, it's also I want other perspectives on this.
Yeah.
I want to hear about other people. And this is something I've had a lot of thought about with other content out there from, especially in the YouTube world, Colin and Samir and different people talking to well-established creators, content creators that are successful. I sit there and I go all the time, I want to hear from the ones that are where we are.
Yeah.
That are like trying to figure it out, that aren't uploading banger after banger and 350,000 views and silver play buttons and all this stuff. Like, I want to hear from the people that are struggling, that question their motivation, or
I want to hear Paul McCartney, but I want to hear him not talk about the hits. I want to hear him talk about.
But it would be interesting.
What do you do on a Tuesday afternoon when you're not motivated?
But then also, I want to hear from a Ted Snow.
Yeah.
Like, what's the difference, and like, what's your experience of it? What was motivating you to write all this music, and how do you feel about not being a big arena sellout act and in the Country Music Hall of Fame or Rock and Roll Hall of Fame or whatever?
Yeah.
So fear is one aspect that comes in. When I'm kind of watching back and pulling notes and pulling clips and all that stuff. And I'm more able to, I am able to quickly dispatch that because I can go back to that kind of anchor thought that I have, which is, the motivation is good. And again, this is something that I would want to watch or listen to, as someone who's been trying to figure all this out for the last, since I was... I think forever. Honestly.
Yeah,
honestly. I've been literally making videos and doing all this stuff my whole life.
I think you said something important earlier. Like, we're not going to get to episode 15.
Yeah.
And it's got it.
Yeah.
Nailed it. Figured it out. Wrap it up, boys.
So how can we be easier? That we're not gonna get to some point where these conversations go, you know what? I think we've got it all figured out. I think, and I understand myself as a creative and artist pursuing this thing. And now the struggle is gone because you and I, we cracked it. Like it's good.
Solved it.
We're good.
Solved it. Did it, boys. Did it, boys. Pack it up. Yeah.
Pack it up.
I think that's, if anything, too, that's one of the theses that we're trying to explore a little bit is it's unsolvable. There's never a right way. It's constantly in flux. The work you're creating, the things that are inspiring you, the thought processes you're having, it's in constant flux.
Yeah.
It's always in motion, and it's never going to settle down. And I had the concern, the same kind of doubt that crept in of why are we doing this? Is this worth it? But then you have the concern, like, humans are pretty redundant creatures.
Yeah.
You get stuck on a narrative and you'll find yourself repeating that narrative, and you might change out bit pieces and whatever, but a lot of people have the same. And so I had the concern at first, this is going to start to sound redundant. After 11 episodes.
Like, hey, you guys covered that in episode 7.
Yeah.
Can we get into something new here?
Yeah. But then I'm, first of all, I think there's always new ways to look at things.
Yeah.
And
I can't tell you how many times I've had the same conversation, whether it was you, my buddy Nick, somebody else, but you use a whole new set of words and feelings and all
it
that
changes
stuff to talk about.
Yeah. And then also too, I think that's part of the challenge on the craft side is how can we approach these topics? And
Yeah.
There's different ways to approach it. There's a universe of ways to approach.
It's just like music, movies. Like there's a lot of music out there.
Yeah.
Yet we keep getting new music.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Whether
and you're still discovering old music from like same time periods. Where
yeah.
Like, oh wow, this is amazing.
Yeah. And obviously there's foundational elements that have overlap. I don't know music terms very well, but
Yeah. Melody,
bridge,
chorus,
chorus, three, chord structure, whatever, all that stuff, but people figure out ways to make something feel new. And
fresh.
I think that happens in conversations as well.
Yeah.
Yes, there might be a lot of overlap with past conversations, and we're going to find that here in the podcast, but you're talking about it in new ways. You're bringing fresh perspectives. your Leonard Cohen example,
Yeah.
you know, like he's going to talk about the things that were affecting him previously to him leaving for Israel. He's going to talk about those things much differently after gaining those experiences.
There's this story that I guess 1973, Leonard Cohen wanted to step away from music, and I'm going to butcher his beautifully eloquent quote, but he had this.
We'll put it in the show
He had
notes.
this amazing quote where he was talking about, and it's a podcast episode worth a listen, I think.
Yeah.
He had this beautiful quote though, where he basically said, "I have nothing of value to add.
Yeah.
I feel like I need to close my mouth." Like, and sometimes oftentimes I feel that way, but yeah. He retired from music. This was in 1973. Obviously, he continued to make music after 1973. But at that point in time, he thought that was his only option. He had nothing else to say. And then he went out and experienced new things. And it's kind of a callback to the video I made last year, where the like Moby Dick, Elliot Kazan, where he talked about you have to, if you're going to create things, you have to experience what it feels like to be ankle deep and like in the rivers of our land. And you have to be in the field and feel the breeze and talk to the people. You have to be a part of the world. And then you come back and you create. And I think that's something that gets lost, especially in our generation and the next generations that are coming after us. I think that's something that's being lost, is that quality of experience informing the creativity. I think we live in a place where we have a lot of people trying to just create.
Yeah.
And, you're not quite seeing the beauty because I want to make, let's look at it through the sphere of creativity in 2023. I want to make a YouTube video, or I'm going to, paint or do a DIY project or something. Like, that's creativity still. It's not, that's maybe not the same as going out and making an album or, like writing, making a great film or something, but it is the same thing.
Yeah.
And I think we live in this world where, people go out and they look for things to inspire that creation, and they look around their lives and this isn't that interesting, but they're not quite looking for the humanity in every moment. They're just looking at it as, well, what do I do every day? I fix coffee, and that's why you have the redundancy.
Right.
And there is almost a lack of experience out there, and experience opens your mind. It informs you. It kind of breaks your binary. And I think a lot of people that feel creatively uninspired, it's because they're almost refusing, or maybe they're afraid to go out and there's what the world has to offer.
There's this trick that the internet plays on us to think that the world is at our fingertips, and in a sense it is. And I think sometimes it lulls us into get up, brush your teeth, make coffee, go into your portal to the digital world, explore, do things there, do your work, create content, connect with people, whatever, close the laptop, have dinner, go to bed, whatever, and rinse and repeat, right? And, for me personally, one of the things that creates a lot of friction for me in my daily life is feeling like I don't have the tools that I need to have more experiences outside of, where I live, the first floor of my home down to my studio, and back and forth day in and day out. And, part of what I think motivates me to make the content that I make is how does that open connections to other people, other brands, whatever that might allow for these experiences, like going to NAB in Las Vegas, or if a brand flew me to some event, or, whatever, that's one thing. But then also the revenue that I might generate, that I don't care about the money. I care about the money as a tool to allow me to go out and have an experience, whether it's, another trip to Colorado, or go to Germany, or wherever.
Let me ask you
and
this.
take those experiences bring them back to then inform the work, inform these conversations, to shift perspectives, to give me new struggles to work through with you in this podcast.
Well, there's definitely like great writers. I don't know why my mind goes to writers, but there's great writers that, you know, the majority of their experience is, I'm thinking of like Marcel Proust, like, you know, well-to-do, would go out and drink with people and talk and whatnot. I don't know if he was necessarily, I don't know enough of the background, but I know a little bit, and I don't know, maybe he had this great depth of experience, but from what I know, it seemed like he was just kind of like very imaginative and, you know, would go out and talk to these people. And then I think of the contemporary proxy to that being the podcast. Mm-hmm. Sure. And so, like, theoretically, right, you could listen to podcasts all day about people telling stories, and you know, wouldn't that expand the the experience? Like, basically, what I'm saying, what I guess the question I'm asking is, this digital proxies that we've created, whether that's watching a documentary or, like, is that an effective gateway to this experiential humanity that we're seeking to inform our work? Is that, or is there something that's different about it that prevents it from being that? And, you know, do you need to go to a Colorado, or do you need to go out and be in the world?
Well, I think the big difference is when you're consuming what someone else made, a documentary, a painting, a podcast, it's all being filtered through a lens of that person or, you know, our experience, right? So there's a little bit of a disconnect from your direct experience of an interaction with someone in Germany versus a podcast where that person had an interaction with them. They're relaying their experience, and then you're by proxy experiencing it as well. I think that still has value. But again, I think we have to have you know, a mixture of these things between, again, what sometimes might be the monotony of daily life, you know, sort of how we get into our routines and make our bed and have a coffee and, you know, go to work and do all that stuff, combined with getting exposure to other worlds through the media we consume and the internet and all this technology, but then firsthand experiences.
I agree about the firsthand
where we go and also challenge ourselves too, because something I sit there and think, well, you know, you need to have a certain amount of money saved up. You need to have all this comfort and all this ease before you can invest in a trip here or a trip there, because you're going to want to stay at a place that's got air conditioning and you want to make sure you've got Wi-Fi and your cell phone works and all that. And part of me goes, like, I want to get uncomfortable. I want to not be thinking always in terms of as little friction as possible. What's some friction going to do in exotic places?
Absolutely,
And exotic can be Minneapolis. You know, and like sleeping in my truck.
Well, we talked about Henry Miller a couple of weeks ago. And after I left that episode, I'm like, I need to dive back into Henry Miller. It's been a little bit.
I can't wait to rediscover it when I watch it, because I'm not remembering it like immediately.
So we talked about it a little bit, and so he has like this 3 series of books. It's like Plexus, Nexus, and Sexus. And I'm reading, when I first moved to Omaha, I read Plexus, and you know, it's interesting because I looked at some of the video, even from this studio. I looked at some old photos, and it was so sparse. You know, I had these. At first, I only had one of the desks because we didn't have enough money to buy the other one. I mean, you know, there just wasn't a lot of money, and you know, one of the desks, I had a little Mac computer that was from like 2015. The Canon 80D was the camera, and but some of the stuff that I was doing, I was really, really proud of. And I mean, look, I've definitely made things that I'm more proud of since then.
Sure.
But I just looked at it. And so the parallel to Henry Miller is he writes about, you know, all of his, especially, you know, you read Tropic of Cancer or Air Conditioned Nightmare or Sexus, Plexus, and some of his older books too. And when he was older, it's just so chaotic, just this
Yeah.
chaotic life, getting evicted and, you know, not being able to pay rent and like living in hotels and, you know, prostitutes and just filth and, you know, debauchery and crazy, just no, like this absolute lack of structure, I guess. And I read it, and part of me is like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
oh, you know, I've got this very controlled, like, oh, sleep, wake up, but then I'm
got
like,
all my little things all the way I want them.
but you read it and you're like, man, this stuff is great. This is really, really good. And then, I'll hear stories of people, and I don't know if that's possible for me at this point.
Yeah.
Because like I was saying, when I got here, it was all, and now, you know, there's all of this stuff and these things, and like, I put these weird values on these things, and I don't know if that's a good thing necessarily.
I know.
And I feel like I need to continue to find that line, because you read some of the stuff, or I'll hear stories. Like I love hearing, I mean, you know, I like John Huston movies, and you listen to like old John Huston stories or Orson Welles stories, and you know, these old Hollywood stories, and they're just like these crazy experiences.
Oh yeah.
And whether it's military experiences or whether it's just like meetings with people or just crazy nights. And I'm like, man, oh, I need to get to bed by 9:30.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I need to open myself up a little bit more, because, I mean, it's just, do I think that you have to be in this crazy, you know, getting evicted to create great work?
No,
That's not what I'm saying. But I think you're right. When we get too comfortable, you know, why is it that I would write every day when it was just me sitting at the desk with my 2015 MacBook and I'm sitting at a table? But now I've got this typewriter, and I've got the, you know, this like electronic typewriter and like all this, and I don't write every day. You know? Like, why was I itching to get out the door every day to take photos when I had the Canon 80D that didn't work right half the time because the focus was or whatever, and now I've got, you know, and it takes a fire down the street to get me out of my door to take a photo.
Which, those were great photos.
It really, sweet.
I checked it out before.
You had to see over. That, crazy fire. Didn't hope nobody was hurt. Like, but I think that uncomfortable, just lack of control is actually good for creativity a little bit. And I think it's good for the nervous system too. You hear about people, like, even there's these scientific studies on like shock. And just, you know, so I'll tie this up in a story, and then I want to continue to expand on this because I'm taking up all the mic time.
You're good.
But I ran that marathon, I mean, like a few months ago at this point. I'm super out of shape now, don't even. But we signed up to do a marathon in Duluth, and
great town.
Home of Bob Dylan. Robert Zimmerman. We went to see his childhood home. It was sweet.
Just driving up
Highway 61
up through that part of Minnesota and into the Upper Peninsula.
So good. Dirty
Lake
mosquitoes.
Superior.
Dirty mosquitoes.
In May.
I mean,
June.
we're talking
prehistoric.
like
like the Jurassic Park dino DNA. That situation.
But anyways, we had this marathon scheduled, and you know, I live a pretty cushy, yuppie existence, right? We do our thing, meet at coffee shops, and you know, I sit at my computer and talk have meetings and
leather camera
typewriters
straps
and and so, and my schedule is pretty contained, and I had a schedule where, you know, I'd wake up, usually either run or do like something, and then in the afternoon I would get a run in. So, you know, I'd cut out at like 4 and go for a run, and then that would kind of transition me out of work into the evening. And I do that every day. Did that for like 4 months of training. Saturdays are long runs, Sundays are easy days. You know, you just kind of, maybe on Wednesday I'll do a workout, and it was nice because it was like return to that college schedule where it's just like it's mindless. And so I'm training, and there's like 6 or 7 weeks of training up to this marathon. And then the week before, a buddy basically, hey, can you come help me out on a shoot? You know, it was a travel shoot, and it was, you got to get on the flight and do the hotel, and, you know, the whole thing. And you have a similar experience recently.
Just did.
And yeah, I can do it. So, get the okay to do, oh, hey, I'm going to be like remote on doing things, and we're going to, so fly out week before marathon. This is Monday morning, like 4 a.m. We fly out.
Yeah.
Old Omaha airport. We're getting back Friday or Thursday night, like 2 a.m. Friday, I've got to drive all day because we've got to get up to Duluth because the race is Saturday morning at 7. And I mean, how these shoots go. You're on your feet the whole time.
They're
You're
draining.
heat
up.
Yeah, and it was 12-hour days.
Yep.
Brutal. You're just kind of doing the whole thing. Client dinners and just nonsense, right? So we do the thing, and the whole week I'm looking. So I have the Whoop thing, which just basically it's just like health metrics, or whatever.
Yep.
And it's really good when you're training because it can kind of be like, hey, you should take it easy today, or you shouldn't. And a whole week I'm watching this, and I'm like, I'm so stupid. Like I'm just looking at the data, and I'm like, why are you so worried about the data? And like da 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 da. But I mean, yeah, like bad sleep all week because you're getting you get to the hotel. It's like, well, you get 6 hours before we have call time. So unfortunate. Not the way it should be done, but that's kind of how these things go sometimes. And so we do the whole week, and I had the choice to make of like, I'm either going to worry about this or I'm just going to go through and just appreciate this for what it is and do the race and not have any expectations on myself, whatever. And, I introducing the chaos, I was like, this is gonna destroy everything. But I kind of just let myself go with it. You gotta almost release.
Did you
and just float?
Surrender?
You gotta surrender to the. But you gotta open yourself to the chaos. And it was a great week. It was an enjoyable week. We had a good shoot. I get back Thursday night. Sleep until about 9. I like to sleep 8 to 9 hours a night. That whole week I averaged probably 6 hours a night.
Yeah.
And, and at the first couple of days I was like grumpy or whatever. Mm-hmm. Then your body starts to adapt.
Yep.
And I went to bed. I got like 5 hours of sleep race night, and I woke up and I had like a great recovery score because my body had just adapted to it.
And you just gave into it.
And I just gave into it. I was like, well, can't change it. Let's just do it. And so I get up and I ran the race, and I didn't run the entire week before. 7 days, just didn't run at all because I was shooting. I was on my feet the whole time. Ran a fine race.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's the lesson. Like, you just got to kind of, I don't think honestly, I thought back, I'm like, I don't know if I would have run as good if I just kept the same cushy schedule. And I was worried about like, well, I'm going to get 8 hours or 9 hours before the race. And
you try to control it.
Yeah. And so we had a friend that kind of did a similar thing, but he, again, tried to control the whole thing.
Yes.
And yeah, didn't have a good race. And it's like, was trying to like, oh, I'm gonna slowly reduce my mileage as I get closer to the race. Yep. And I'm gonna do this. And I was just like, well, I didn't run. I haven't slept that much. I eat a Cliff Bar the morning of.
Send it.
And in the race, I'm just like present.
Yep.
And it was great.
It's great.
And that taught me a massive lesson. It was a massive lesson of, again, with what you're saying, chaos is not a bad thing, I don't think, if we can learn to channel it and learn to accept it. And it's always nice to have this to come back to.
Yep.
But if you can learn to insert it, almost like it's almost a necessity, right? You'll go crazy if you just live the cushy. Most of us will. Some people can do it.
Well, and to me, when I hear cushy, I'm hearing like, regimented, repeated, again, controlled. Like, I got to have my coffee at this time. I got to have this. Where's my thing? I got to have this t-shirt, like all these things that you're trying to control is just sort of like maintain this illusion of balance and sort of comfort.
I didn't have my coffee, my whole day shot.
Yeah. And so a similar experience, and I won't go into it too much, but just getting thrown for a loop and having to fly to New York to film a golf event. I've never filmed for them before. It's my buddy DJ.
A week and a half ago.
Yeah. It's a company he's working for now. And so your mind gets racing. Am I going to remember to bring everything? Am I going to have this, the right
Great
cable?
Dude.
I'm going to have the right cable. Like, you start working yourself up into all this stuff, and anxiety. I got to leave my kids, all this stuff that you start freaking out about. And slowly I just started unpacking, not unpacking, but sort of surrendering. I jokingly said that word earlier. The reason I said it is because it's a word that's come up several times in previous episodes. And it's something that I've learned to do is, look at a situation. You've got a lot of anxiety. You're freaking out about it. You don't know how to control it, to get a handle on it. Figure out what you can control and then surrender to the rest. I was on that shoot. I'm like, this just is what it is. It's 93 degrees out. You're running around with a camera. You haven't done this before for this specific, client. It's going to be what it's going to be. And that doesn't mean you phone it in and you just half-ass it, but you just go, look, I'm going to take photo. I ended up not getting enough photos. I wasn't in trouble for it, but they would prefer more photos. And I was more focused on some stand-up interviews and this and that, all this other stuff. So I'm going out again, not as last minute, but I'm flying out to another golf tournament to film it because there's a scheduling conflict with DJ. I'm certainly less freaked out about it. But then at the flip side, I don't want to be so loose that I'm not sharp. Yeah. That I'm not paying attention, that I'm not, that I'm just like, I don't want to be careless. Yeah. Right.
But I think
just sort of just like complete surrender and just, if I remember to press record, great.
Yeah. Tying it in though, like, do you feel that when you came back, you were sharper about your day to day?
I think
it injected a.
Well, I think I just, again, this is all about balance. I think if the deck is stacked too much on just my daily routine and getting the kids up and making coffee and sitting down and recording, like I need to have this back and forth of experiences that make me uncomfortable, that push the limits, that force me to surrender,
reset your baseline almost.
Yeah, that just get me uncomfortable or get me out of my routine. By the end of some of those experiences, I'm very much craving going back. I can't wait to just wake up, make coffee, hang out with the kids, because I'll appreciate it more. Yeah. It'll be less about control and reducing friction and more about savoring it and being present and in the moment, right? And not going, how do I take 3 steps out of this process to make it a little bit easier? How do I buy more shit to make this thing easier to do? How do I talk to my kids or my wife about streamlining the morning routine? All this stuff that you're trying to control.
I'm going to optimize all these trivialities. Yeah.
So, so I'll give you just a quick example. So, when you think about getting picked up at the airport, whether you Uber home or somebody comes and picks you up, you just got back from a thing, you're kind of tired, you'd want to get home. I did the opposite. I was like, you know what, honey? Can you park the truck at the parking garage and bring the kids into the airport and let's just have a little thing here.
Relax,
so I went to the car rental lounge, which is kind of a cool lounge at Epley Airfield, and you can look at the.
Looks like 2001.
Yeah, it's very cool. Kids came up. It wasn't like immediately, okay, let's go, let's get in the truck, let's load everything up. It was like, let's just hang out here for a minute. The kids love going to the airport. I wanted to just hug them and be with them because I missed them like crazy. And it was just, choosing to kind of do the opposite of what you might normally do when you return home from someplace after being on the road. So
you're zenning out, man. You're like growing your hair out. You're becoming more.
But just to wrap up the point, it's going. Look, there are times where I want a 2-week clip of my daily boring routine life. But then there are times where I want some chaos and I want some unpredictability and I want some spontaneity. I want some discomfort on an adventure, getting thrown into something I'm not used to, if it's work related, or choosing to just go, you know what? Alex, you've been talking about this. I've been talking about this. Let's get in the truck or the Lexus, and we're going to go to South Dakota and figure it out. Yeah. We don't have a hotel. We don't have a motel. We don't even know what we're going to do, but we're just going to make it up as we go and see what happens. Yeah. And then, again, you come home and it's just a different perspective on.
Well, I think we'll overanalyze things to death. And Audrey and I, the first year we lived in this apartment, we went on a trip to Colorado. Colorado is what, eight? It was
depending on which.
It was the Rockies, so it was a little past Denver, so probably 8.5 hours away. We left on a Friday night and got back on a Sunday night. Yeah. Or we left it Friday at like 5, and we had no idea where we were going. We figured out when we got a little close. Okay, this is where we're going. We started hiking into this random trail at like 2 a.m. We saw a cougar. We had to pull off the trail and camp. They didn't sleep at all. Yeah. And then the next day we hiked like 9 miles up to this peak, and we ended up camping up on the peak, and it was fake.
Yeah.
It was fake. Like it looked.
Yeah, this is not possible.
It was out of my out of my perception of what is earthly possible.
Impossible.
And we slept there and woke up and saw it in the morning, and it was like kind of cold at night, whatever, but it was unbelievable. And to this day, we've been to Colorado probably 5 or 6 times since then. Mm-hmm. To this day, we're like, we have not even come, and we've planned stuff.
Chasing
like,
that high.
You got to go to
that Rocky Mountain high.
You got to go, but you got to go here. You got to do this. This is, and we've tried all of it, and it's like we've never come close to that.
Yeah.
And it was just something we just tried. And, we drove back the next day.
Yep.
It was brutal. It was awful.
Yeah.
We slept like 4 hours and, 3 nights. Terrible for the body. But that was such an inspiring experience.
Yeah.
We've tried to reach that high, like you said, to this day and haven't been able to. And it was just such a perfect experience. And it's so funny because it was just unplanned. It was purely chaotic. And I think the best comes when you just give into chaos, and the same goes for creativity. Mm-hmm. You're trying to plan out every step of the way. You're limiting what's possible. You need to get uncomfortable. You need to get out there, and you need to just start presenting yourself and, let the chaos present itself. And I've even gotten a little more open on going and I'm going to go hang out with people, or I'm going to go and, have conversations, or I'm going to go and try to go to events and things like that.
Yes, exactly.
It just presents the
get out of my, it's the cliche
get
thing,
out of your
step out of my comfort zone. Right. And I think we arrive at that because whether people really know the benefits of that or not, it's a common thing in our language as a culture, as because I think people have seen the benefits of it.
Yeah.
You get a fresh perspective on regular everyday life, but then you also have memories, highs. Things
I told you the other day when we just went on that camping trip for 2 days. Yeah. And put the phone away for 2 days and just kind of got away. And I came back and I was charged up. I was ready to go. I was like, man.
Yep.
A couple days away, doing some things that we don't normally do. It really just just walking, driving through old towns, talking to people, hanging out in people's stores. Mm-hmm. It just charges you up in a completely different way.
I think too, it's a wonderful life. It's showing you when you come back to regular life, not to take that stuff for granted. Whether it's family or the Newell Post, that breaks off,
pulls that out. Yeah,
and he loves all that
that's
stuff.
That's the I look at that every day and I'm like, man, I should write.
Now if he goes 10 years without ever having an uncomfortable experience or whatever, he might fall into that frustration again that he was dealing with. I'm going on this last minute-ish trip to Oakland. So I'm flying to Oakland on Sunday and then filming this golf tournament, flying back on Tuesday. I have 1 day here. Then I fly back to California because I'm visiting friends in Los Angeles. But I'm also, going to be making some content. I'm going to do some photography there. I'm going to go to LACMA.
It's like your favorite place to shoot.
I lived in LA for 3 years and never went to LACMA.
Yeah.
So I'm going to finally, check that out and do some other stuff. Yeah, I love, and that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
And then I'll be there from that Thursday to Tuesday. And while I'm there, I am going to be experiencing pain. They have a very nice home in Los Feliz.
Yeah.
I've got my own room. It's very, very cushy, if you will.
Absolutely.
But I'm going to start feeling uncomfortable because I'm going to be missing my family.
Yeah.
And
you're missing your environment. You're where everything is. Everything's together.
I will say though, because I visited these friends so many times, that there is a little routine there.
Yeah.
Like I have my own bathroom. I know how to make the coffee. It's mi casa su
Just wait till you get there and find out they got a new coffee maker. Your head's gonna explode.
I didn't get the memo. What's going on? Everything's different. But even when I'm there, because I don't have to make dinner. I don't have to pick up my daughter from school. I'm sensing, and I'm even actually thinking about how to kind of tell my friend, I've got some cravings for some adventure.
Yeah.
And one thing I've been thinking about is, grabbing an Uber really early one morning and going down to Manhattan Beach and watching the sunrise and taking photos and, making some photographs personally and for the other channel. and just soaking it all in, like,
Yeah.
getting all that. Cause again, it's fuel for when I come home. And it's again, part of that, that vacillation between, my life here, and then when I do travel, even if it's comfortably or uncomfortably unpredictable and spontaneous.
And I want to break in, because like we've told like 3 stories now.
Yeah.
It's all been about travel.
Yes.
And it's like look, some of the best experiences I've had are just a block away from here.
Absolutely.
Like hanging out in somebody's house.
Some of the photo excursions we've done.
Photo excursions, a house party.
Yeah.
Just going into like a weird bar or like a weird shop. Like, we drove to that shop the other day, Audrey and I, and met that guy and had this long conversation and took photos. And like, this is not, we're not saying you have to go, like, this is not a vacation.
Get on a plane.
It's not I think it's, we both work kind of satellite to that production world. So sometimes that's just what our weird out of nowhere things are. That's not what we're saying though, in terms of, we're not saying anything, but it's just getting out and trying new experiences. You read Henry Miller's, The Tropic of Cancer, and he's just talking about doing things around Paris and like his experiences with people and the conversations he's having, and conversations about books that he likes to read, or authors, and why authors are like worthy of praise and not worthy of praise. And it's just, it can be as localized. I mean, sometimes the best thing is just going for a walk around the neighborhood here.
Yeah.
The fire, that was one of the biggest experiences I've had in the last couple of months. And I was sitting in here and smoke started coming in through the window, and I was like, oh, what is that? And I grabbed the camera and I go over there, and
Now, in that decision though, was there any part of you that went,
no,
I
don't know why, but the camera's right there. So I was just like, what is going on? Well, gonna take this. And then I get down there and I was like, I've never seen something like, I've seen fires before, but I mean, this, you saw the freaking, like, that was a dragon coming out of a,
that thing is burned.
Yeah. That thing is fried.
And they got there in time, because that thing would have been a pile of ashes.
With
a little bit more time.
The whole, the whole line was on, it looked like Armageddon. And I was across the street and you just feel the heat.
Oh yeah.
I mean, but that was a block away from my house.
Yep.
And, yeah, I know that doesn't really fit the narrative, where it's like, I didn't have any, I was just like, get over there, but I was curious. But no, I mean, it's just getting out. It's being open. And the window was open, you know? If the window was closed, that's maybe the metaphor in this story, is the window was open. And if the window was closed, I wouldn't have smelled the smoke. I wouldn't have gone to investigate further. I wouldn't have found the fire. Make sure your window's open. Be open to new experiences.
Yeah, I think that
they'll present themselves to you.
There are things like that out there. They're not, dangerous or potentially, hurting someone, but there's a small town in Iowa and there's a dive bar there, and you're scared to go to check it out, but you're like, you know what?
Let's go watch NASCAR on a Saturday night and see what this is all about.
And check it out. And some of the best experiences I've had in my life, especially coming from the performing arts, where the part of me that's introverted and scared of being in front of people with something that's prepared. Some of the best experiences I've had in my life are, facing that fear, pushing past it, and realizing on the other side, like, oh, that wasn't so bad.
Yeah.
And the euphoria that at least I personally have experienced when I come out of that situation that I'm scared of, unscathed. Or even, better off because of it. That's the golf tournament. It's, and there's definitely things I've turned down that I've been like, no, I don't want to do that, because I'm honestly too scared. I want to remain comfortable making my videos in my basement
just
and
keep
making dinner for my kids and all that stuff. That's a little too scary. And, for some of them, I've been like, I've beat myself up a little bit for kind of copping out on it. And
well, I mean, there's times when you're like, hey, do you want to go shoot?
Yeah.
And I'll be like, yeah. Like, I do kind of want to hang out, but you got to go down there. You got to park.
It's hot out. Ground. I don't have.
Dude, I think I'll wait. Yeah. And most of the time, once you're in it, you're just, it changes the math.
Yep.
And I think we need to just be more open, because that's going to inform the work you're making. That's going to inform. And the problem with a lot of work, I think, is that we rely on. I mean, here I wrote digital proxy to humanity.
Yeah.
We talked about it a little earlier, but we're relying on these digital proxies of, well, I watched a documentary, and I can watch a documentary and be like, wow, that's cool, and get inspiration from it. But there's nothing like, I can watch all the documentaries about I talk about the South and like how I have this weird, relationship with it. And we can watch all the documentaries. I can look at all the photo books I want. And I'm like, wow, this is cool. But then you go down there and you spend a week in like the Appalachian Mountains, or you start talking to people, or you go to a Waffle House and 30 people are like, oh, how's your life going? Like, I hope, like, it's just super nice people. And you're like, I could have watched all the documentaries and this is an experience that I wouldn't have gotten.
Well, and I just had a conversation with my wife where I was like trying to just sort of get on the same page with my need for like micro adventures, especially with my kids, because I don't want them to just live in our house, in their classroom or preschool.
This bubble of contemporary life.
Super tiny bubble. And we go downtown, or we go to a museum, or we go here or go there. We go to my mom's house. But, like we can really open up the world to them. And, and my wife is a little bit more locked down on things, a little bit more concerned about finances, even to the point where it's like, well, if you drive the truck 2 hours, like that's gas money and all that. And she's not like, but it just causes it's something that she wants a little bit more control of. So there's some friction there. So it's funny when my wife travels for work or she visits a friend or something, that's when I take the kids out and we go do stuff.
It's dad time.
And so I had a conversation with her just to start wrapping this up. And I was like, I just want to start preparing you for the fact that part of my creativity and my inspiration is to sometimes just on a Saturday morning go, kids, we're going to drive 2 hours to Waffle House and figure it out in the northern suburbs of Kansas City. Yeah. Like, I got to go do something.
Freaking great. And we started, this is so stupid and hipster, but like we've started taking back roads when we travel.
Yeah, dude. I'm like, it
is like we drove back from, where did we go? Missouri.
Yeah.
And we took the back roads back for the first like 4 hours.
Yeah.
And it added 2 hours to the drive. But we were like pulling off to take photos. You're pulling off to explore little towns. We were so caught up in just like the land.
Yes.
And like just falling in love with these little towns. And we're just, you see people's houses and you get a sense for how the people in that area live, and you get a sense for what the land looks like. And I'm just like, take highways. Take highways.
Yeah.
Constantly take highways. The interstate, all contemporary life tries to do is just pull us away into these little bubbles, and it's like the good stuff is out there when you're opening yourself up to people and you're having conversations and you're sharing experience with people.
So my grandma turns 90 in November.
Heck yeah.
Just after she's been to like 80 countries. She's traveled all over the place.
Is she still traveling?
No, not anymore.
She's okay. Hey, there's some like 98-year-olds out there.
Yeah,
that
100%.
Getting after it. Like that's...
So I'm going to go back. This is Thanksgiving weekend. It's my in-laws' sort of turn for us to be home for Thanksgiving. So I'm going to go back. I can't miss my grandma's 90th birthday. Yeah. And I haven't decided if I'm going to fly or drive the truck. I've got a 2019 Ford F-150, and it's nice to go on road trips with. I know. Yeah. So again, I've been going, I won't have the kids with me. I don't think, they're not going to come just because it's a little, school, they have school. It's a little crazy. That, so it's just not really feasible. But I'm sitting there going, okay, I'm going to drive back, grandma's birthday. I'm going to go in the city. I'm going to get a hotel in Chicago. I'm going to do some street photography down there. I'm going to go to the Art Institute, ride the L, like go to my old haunts. I lived in Chicago for several years after undergrad. And then I'm like, well, maybe I'll go back, come back home, go down to Champaign where I went to undergrad. I haven't been back to Champaign in 20 years. Yeah. I like stop there and then cut across Illinois, go through Missouri. Yeah. And like, if I don't make it home in a day to Iowa, just like find a place to stay. And
you never realize how cheap, and so many people are like, oh, cheap motels, but a motel is like $80-$90. Yeah,
I'll be all right. Like, I'll find a place to stay.
Yeah, and it's like contrary to popular belief, no, not all motels have bed bugs. Right.
But
check for them. But like,
what's so stupid too is these shoots, this New York shoot, this shoot in Oakland with this golf event. It's really shored up.
I like how we're like, get away from travel. And then it's like highways and travel. We're going to wrap it up after this, but
but these two last minute events, kind of, flushed me up financially. So if I were to stay at like a Holiday Inn Express on the drive home for $110 or whatever, like, it's not a problem. It's not a concern, obviously.
Well, one of the best experiences that Audrey and I have had was we were driving around Highlands, North Carolina last year.
Yeah.
It's like this groggy, foggy, gross night in the middle of winter. It's like December 31st or New Year's or something. And we're in this town, and we wanted to stay at this hotel in town, but it got under 30 degrees there, so all the pipes were frozen because they just can't really. It's like it's North Carolina, but it's right. So they're like, it got down to like 20 degrees here. The whole infrastructure's broken, so the hotel was closed. So we had to go find like the secondary hotel, and it was just like this old kind of motel.
Yeah,
and it was fine, but it wasn't like. They're the only hotel in town, so we paid way too much for the room.
Yep.
But it was this cute room. It was pretty dirty, but like it was cute. It had a fireplace, had a chair. I like moved the desk around and set up my typewriter, and we had TCM on nonstop on the TV. Glorious. We broke out, because we were in the truck, so we had all the camping stuff. So we broke out, and she like chefed up on the porch, like made our dinner and stuff because it was too late by the time we got there for anybody. I mean, man, that's like one of the most special experiences that I've had in the last 5 years. I will always remember that shitty hotel, sleeping in that bed, watch like TCM going constantly. Yep. We had like fajitas and it was amazing. A little fireplace, waking up in the morning, going to the lobby to get like some shitty coffee and just drinking it and writing for a couple hours. And we just got back in the car and went back to Georgia. It was like awesome.
And I think that's what
Well, and the whole time before that, we were like pissed and like we got to stop setting ourselves up for this, just these unplanned whatevers. And then we left and we're like, maybe we need to not beat ourselves up so much. We need to make room, because I'm like, it was a little more expensive and it was a little more chaotic, but that was way more magical than it would have been if we would have tried to plan this whole thing out.
That's exactly right.
That's the metaphor.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. And I crave that type of stuff. And I think about that all the time with Aaron, to the point where when we're in it, I'll go, I know this is weird or friction or money or whatever, but 3 months from now, a year from now, we're going to look back on this and we're going to wish we could do it all over again. How much money would you give if to go in a time machine and do it over with your current perspective?
Yeah.
And this is, part of our conversations
100%.
are learning how to shortcut to that in those moments so that it's not about
and it's a lot of
pain
these
and
it's a lot of
frustration.
these things that I think both of us have gone through pain and friction to kind of get to maybe this is how it's done. And so, if we can have conversations about it, and that can allow other people to get through these thoughts, and then, go past what we're thinking, figure out what the next iteration is. I think it's a powerful thing. And that's why we're doing this.
It had been a golden afternoon, and I remember having the familiar conviction that life was beginning over again with the summer and summer.